this is story and imagination and telling our pasts and predicting our futures. That's the magic of why we get into this business.
I really wish I would have taken myself seriously as somebody who could make art earlier in my life. I didn't know anybody who made money creatively.
Audiences want to see things that are new. I want to go see a story I've never seen before, and that's what we're betting on.
As you join us today, we encourage you to reflect on the land that you're on and its history. We're located on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee. The territory is within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant and is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We're grateful to work on this land.
Good morning. I'm peering out in the audience. Okay, now I can see you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Anita Lee, Chief Programming Officer here at TIFF. I'm joined by Jeff Minocton, Chief Senior Director of Industry and Theatrical Programming, and the Programmer of Primetime. We're thrilled to be here with you this morning to kick off this year's Industry Conference at the 2024 Toronto International Film Festival, presented by Rogers. We hope you are caffeinated and ready to be inspired by our lineup of incredible speakers. This 5-day event is just one part of an overall offering each year to support Canadian and international professionals who use TIFF as a platform for business development, networking, and professional education. In addition to the conference, we have an incredible lineup of industry screenings, development programs, networking events, and business-to-business opportunities that the industry team here at TIFF has curated and organized for you. We hope that you use your time here to connect and explore and engage with our overall services. A huge thank you to our industry team for the incredible programming that they've shaped, as well as all the teams here at TIFF who make what we do possible.
Hi, everyone. Over the next 5 days, some of the most important topics within the industry today will be discussed right here on this stage, including the state of theatrical exhibition, creating a more accessible industry for all, the future of awards and the awards bodies, strategies for sustainable production, and elevating the artistry in documentary filmmaking. New this year, we will have live on-stage podcasts, 2 hosted by our friends at The Ankler with special guests Hugh Grant and Raoul Peck, and 1 hosted by IndieWire with guest RJ Cutler. Companies and organizations speaking include Pixar, Neon, BAFTA, the Grammys, the Oscars, Hulu, TikTok, The Blacklist, and many, many more. We are excited to share that our TIFF Sloan Science and Technology Project Pitch event is back for its 2nd year, providing a select group of creators the opportunity to participate in a non-competitive pitch to further develop their science and technology-related films and episodic projects.
Although 2024 feels like a banner year for TIFF industry, programming, and initiatives, we will be also celebrating our next chapter as we prepare to launch an official content market in 2026, supported by a $23 million investment from the Government of Canada. The new content market will be a game changer for the Canadian screen-based industries and international companies at large. We have plans to grow from roughly 5,000 industry delegates to over 12,000 in the next few years by providing a more robust infrastructure for buyers, sellers, producers, and creators working in film, television, and digital content. We will be announcing more news about the content market in the coming months. If you're interested in your company being involved, please reach out to industry@tiff.net. And as a reminder, TIFF Industry announced a year-round professional membership earlier this year. If you're a local professional interested in more programming like you're about to experience, we encourage you to subscribe at tiff.net industry so that you can take advantage of the monthly programming we can provide, as well as the many benefits of the membership. Okay.
We would not be able to provide any of this industry programming without the support of our major industry supporter, Ontario Creates. Before our first session, we'd like to welcome Karen Thornstone, President and CEO of Ontario Creates, to the stage to say a few words.
They tell me the mic is a little too high for my short stature. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Anita. It is really my privilege to be here to help welcome you all to the opening of the TIFF Conference 2024. I'm sure everyone here is going to agree when I say what an amazing festival lineup the team has put together this year. I think the lineup of sort of world-class films is rivaled only by the really amazing top-notch industry program that we've got, and I'm sure you're all anxious to get on with kicking things off with Stephen Moffat this morning, so I'll be quick. It really is a privilege for Ontario Creates to be such a longtime partner of TIFF and to be a supporter of the industry program at the festival. For those of you who don't know us, Ontario Creates supports the growth and investment in all of our creative industries, so publishing, music, and the screen-based sectors, and we do that through a range of programs, financial incentives, and collaboration events at international marketplaces like TIFF. These sectors really are big business in Ontario. In fact, the creative industries contribute an astounding $26 billion to this province's economy every year. So thank you and congratulations to all of you on that important work. I think our reputation as a global leader comes about as a result of our film festival, but also our deep capacity and our world-class infrastructure, our crews, our talent, our suppliers, our production support, and of course, our leadership in the Ontario Green Screen program with so many industry partners at the table. So if you're not already doing business with Ontario, we hope that you will check us out at ontariocreates.ca or visit our stand in the Industry Centre. And maybe you'll also get out to see a few Ontario films. There's lots of films that were shot in Ontario, supported by our Film Commission, but also we've got 8 films in the festival this year that were actually supported through our Film Fund, so direct investment from Ontario Creates. So lots and lots of press and industry screenings available. Please get out, see what Ontario's filmmakers have to offer. And with that, I'm going to get out of the way so you can get on with this morning's program, and I wish you all a fabulous conference and festival.
Thank you so much, Karen. It is my pleasure to introduce our first session titled Visionaries with Stephen Moffat, a true grandmaster for creating beloved series from Doctor Who to Sherlock to Coupling. Moffat has reshaped British television. Throughout his career, he has deftly navigated the challenge of faithfully representing fan-favorite characters while weaving in new and exciting storylines. Stephen is a true visionary in every sense of the word, and we're thrilled to have him here to discuss his career and how and where he finds his inspiration. And his most recent series, Douglas is Cancelled. As a reminder, our programming is made possible by the support of all of our sponsors and partners. A sincere thank you to our presenting sponsor, Rogers, our major sponsors, RBC and Visa, our major industry supporters, Ontario Creates and Telefilm Canada, and our media partner for all of our visionaries, The Hollywood Reporter. Guiding us through this conversation is European Bureau Chief at the Hollywood Reporter, Scott Roxborough. Scott reports on the international film and television industries from Germany and from film festivals and markets worldwide. So please give a large round of applause for Stephen and Scott.
Well, good morning. Good morning. As just heard, my name is Scott Roxborough. I'm European Bureau Chief, the Hollywood Reporter. And it's my great pleasure to be talking here with Stephen Moffat, a man who really does need no introduction, so I'm not sure what I'm doing here. But I was trying to find an awkward sports metaphor to compare Stephen to the greats of sport, and I thought of the Michael Jordan comparison, the Michael Jordan of British TV. But since we're here in Toronto, I thought maybe something like the Matt Sundin of British TV, the Doug Gilmour of British TV. Yeah, it's great. Always good to find. There's got to be at least 10 Leafs fans in this room. So, but if I look back at Stephen's incredible career, going back to his rookie years with Coupling, still for me one of the best British sitcoms of the last 30 years, to the series you all know, Sherlock, the Doctor Who creations, to Dracula, Inside Man, or his new series, Douglas is Cancelled. I think there's only one proper hockey comparison, and that's got to be Gretzky. Stephen Moffat is the great one of British TV. He's the guy, and this is my last hockey metaphor, who always finds the back of the net. Thank you very much. I worked a long time on that. Stephen, obviously we want to talk about your life and career, but maybe if we could start by going way back. You're Scottish for your sins, and
didn't we invent Canada? No disrespect.
Exactly. All our drunk.
And all your names are Scottish names.
All our great drunk prime ministers.
Whole country's a rip-off.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. The improvement, I'd say. Yeah. The sequel that proves it.
Jaws 2 was a disappointment. But I mean, come on.
No, but what I wanted to ask, growing up, can you tell a little bit about how you grew up, particularly what TV you grew up on, and if that had any influence on the kind of television that you ended up making or that you wanted to make?
I have not moved on emotionally at all from childhood, is the answer to that. The things I watched as a kid are roughly the things I make now. So, I mean, this is horribly cliched, but it's also horribly true. I just love Doctor Who. Do we know roughly Doctor Who in Canada? Yes. Okay, we do. Now, the thing about loving Doctor Who when you're a kid is it sort of forces you to look behind the scenes, partly because the way they made it in those days, you could quite often literally see behind the scenes. And questions like, why is there a new Doctor now? Sort of lead you down the road of, so they had to get a different actor. So that sort of got me interested in behind the scenes of television. I also was obsessed with the Sherlock Holmes stories. You see, it's so cliche, isn't it? Obsessed with them. I read them. I think I'm one of the few people who's read them in order, read them in the correct order. And I watched every Sherlock Holmes film I could and voted Basil Rathbone the best. But that was a long time ago. It was before Jeremy Brett even got anywhere near it. So those were the things that influenced me. And, stories about magic and time travel and Narnia and all that stuff. That's what I liked then. And frankly, that's what I like now. I always kind of think, well, like Doctor Who, or even indeed Sherlock, it's like, when you go to a really fancy restaurant and you're trying to choose which salad or risotto you want to depress yourself with, and you look down and you see the children's menu. And it's great, isn't it? It's like sausages and fries and shit, right? I mean, wow! That's what Doctor Who and Sherlock are. You've been watching lots of very serious, important drama about sad people looking out of windows in the rain. No, we're gonna blow some stuff up.
No, and you've been obviously amazing, not just at blowing stuff up, but I think in some ways you anticipated a whole wave in the industry of remaking, of rebooting. You were able to do it so incredibly well with, I'm not sure if you call Sherlock a reboot, but definitely with Doctor Who, and you've done with Dracula, one of my favorite series of yours, an amazing reinvention of that story. I want to ask how to properly do reboots, but actually, before that, maybe, why do reboots or reinventions go so wrong, like remakes? I'm thinking particularly if we just pick an example of the air, like what did NBC do to your show Coupling when they tried to make it into the US?
I think if you are even slightly cynical about rebooting something, if you are doing it for the wrong reason, like this would fit. Look, Coupling, the poster for Coupling looks a bit like the poster for Friends, therefore it is the same. When you're comparing a massive mainstream, brilliant NBC hit to a BBC Two sitcom from Britain, they are not the same thing. I think the key to remaking something, rebooting it. It's actually Russell did the main work in rebooting Doctor Who, or Sherlock, or Dracula, or any of these things, is don't go near it unless you love it, unless you are desperate to see this version. In fact, what you really want to do, which was what Mark and I discussed all the time on Sherlock Holmes, was we want to explain to people why we love Sherlock Holmes, and they should too. And there's a bunch of stuff about Sherlock Holmes you haven't noticed that no one ever talks about. And we want to bring that out. And the same with Doctor Who, which obviously I was partially involved in at the beginning and then took over after a while. You want to say, no, look, you think it's that cheesy old BBC adventure serial. It's actually the single smartest television format ever devised. By that I mean, you can sack anyone. I mean, whoa! Can't do that on Starsky and Hutch, I'm telling you.
Is that how you sold it to the BBC, the reinvention thing? If anyone pisses you off, we can just get rid of them.
Yeah, well, is that element to Doctor Who? Yeah, pay rise, you say. Get me Tom Baker. It has got that lovely element. Also, it has the star. I think this is unique to Doctor Who. It has a massive star role. Right? It is a star vehicle every single time, but you can switch out the star. Where else can you do that? Normally, if you've got the hero's name in the title, and a big star playing, or someone who becomes a big star playing that hero role, that you've got as long as that guy will hang around or that woman will hang around. If you do Doctor Who, just say, well, just let us know, and we'll get another one. I'm sorry, all doctors, if you're listening. We love you all.
Well, you've been very good at like bringing them back as well.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, well, they all want to come back. This big secret about all the Doctor Who's is and I know quite a few of them socially, is everyone who's ever played Doctor Who thinks they're the real one, and the others are, kind of.
Create some problems, like at the pub afterwards. Are there a lot of?
It creates problems, I think, in the David Tennant family circle, because his father-in-law is Peter Davison, and I don't think either of them thinks the other one's a proper Doctor. I was watching a new David Tennant episode, oddly enough, with Peter Davison had come round. And there's a whole emotional scene between the Doctor and his companion, and in the background you could see the TARDIS parked. And Peter just pipes up in the middle of the scene with, he hasn't parked it very well, has he? Look at that, it's half on the curb. Anyway.
So, no, for you personally then, is it always then going back to the things you loved to pick out? Because of course you've done some very original work, and we're going to talk about Douglas's Cancel, which is a very different thing. But when it comes to these type of reinventions, or is it always the stuff that you look? I mean, you must be offered 1,000 things to say, how about this? How about this? Is that how you select? Is that how you decide?
Well, no. I mean, if you had to offer it to me, then I didn't know about it enough. If you know what I mean. There's about one more thing I'd be interested in doing. But as I say, it's not a case of someone comes to me and says, let's reboot this old show. And I might go, and this has happened, go and look at that old show and say, yeah, that's brilliant, that old show. You should do that. But go and find someone who's the biggest fan in the world and also runs shows for a living, because it won't be me. You've got to love it so much. Otherwise, I mean, the great thing about doing Doctor Who and Sherlock and Dracula was we didn't really have to do any research. We knew all that stuff. We knew what we were messing around with. Yes, passion is the driver in all those things. Curiously enough, I think all fiction operates this way. All fiction is a reboot secretly of something. It's whether it's overtly a reboot, it's actually called Doctor Who, or you can look at an antecedent for every show. Every show, yeah, that's a bit like that one you grew up with, isn't it? Yes, it is. That's right and proper. Hamlet is, I think, the fourth version of Hamlet. You know, it is right and proper that fiction proceeds that way. You know, Ian Fleming sat down one day and thought, do you know what spy fiction's getting wrong? It's this. Now, there were already spies like Sherlock Holmes. There was Richard Hannay and so on. He said, you know, what if it was Richard Hannay, but he had sex more often? Well, that kind of worked out, didn't it? Arthur Conan Doyle, when he invented Sherlock Holmes, there were already detectives making deductions, quite famously. Auguste Dupin, the most famously written by, and brilliant stories. But Doyle just thought, I know how you should really do that. And so he does a variation. Just about everything is a variation of something else. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
So you don't despair at all by looking, when you look and see the number of reboots, reinventions, TV shows.
I don't particularly. I mean, look, if you widen your gaze a little, every detective story is a reboot of Sherlock Holmes. Not some of them, all of them. If you read the very, very first Hercule Poirot story, A Mysterious Affair at Styles, it's practically Sherlock Holmes fan fiction. I mean, it is. I mean, it really, actually, properly is. But of course, it develops off in a new way. That's not limiting. And I think obviously, writers are always people who read a lot. And at some point, they want their goal, right? You know, Stephen King reads a lot of horror. You can sort of tell, you know. And he says, you know what I could do with a haunted hotel? I'll show you, right? So you take all these ideas, you take all these, it's like humming along to a tune and changing it, says I, who never hums along to a tune ever, because I'm tone deaf, but you know. Yeah.
And so with some of your new work, we'll talk about Douglas and Cancel in a minute, but Inside Man would be another example. These sort of shorter, limited series, which seem to have seem to be less inspired by your childhood, actually, if I could say it that way. Is it a way you're moving in your career now, that you want to explore these stories, or that maybe are a bit more adult, maybe are a bit more complicated and more shades of gray? I'm just wondering, because it seems to be something in the last few years that you've done a bit of.
Well, I mean, sometime in about 2017, 2018, I fell off Doctor Who and Sherlock. You know, I stopped them both at the same time. Doctor Who obviously carried on to glory, and Sherlock finished, at least for the time. And so suddenly I had done that sort of thing, that sort of pulpy action adventure nonsense with a vaguely Edwardian hero for many, many years, and literally nothing else. So I was trying to do something as different as could be from that. I mean, but you can still see that I'm vaguely messing around in the same thing. Because in Inside Man, and whether I pulled it off or not is a different question, but I remember thinking at some point, if you look at any true crime documentaries or listen to true crime podcasts to depress yourself about the state of humanity, you realize that Sherlock Holmes could never solve any crime, because all crimes are rubbish. They're all the result of panic and mania and passing stupidity. They make no bloody sense. Sherlock Holmes could not solve a crime because he'd say, but these people are all doing stupid things, right? He's the least qualified person to solve a crime. So it was sort of messing around with the alternative with someone who gets, no, you know, crime is literally when people do something stupid. So geniuses need not apply.
That whole myth of the Moriarty, the Hannibal Lecter, the genius.
There aren't any. Genius. There aren't. It's a bad decision. I remember talking to there was an old friend of mine. I've lost touch with him now, but he was a right old fascist copper, I have to say. He was very much to the right, but we're good friends, and we were always arguing away about things. And he said at one point, I was talking about, how do mystery stories stack up against reality? And he said, Stephen, they're not at all. You got to understand that crime is stupid. It's the stupidest way of making money you could possibly imagine. Just about anything else would be better than that. The only reason that police work is even remotely possible is they're all really stupid, right? So I thought, okay.
You really want to steal money, you should become a banker. I mean,
yes, absolutely. But that's his point. He said, look, there's loads of things you could do that are less risky, less arduous, involve less input and sweat than crime. It sucks.
Well, let's. I think we can all support that crime sucks.
Yeah. Yes, kids, down with crime. I come to Canada with important information.
That's good. Well, let's talk about your new series, Douglas is Cancelled. It hasn't been broadcast here yet, so I'm not sure. I've had the opportunity to see it, but I don't think many people here in the room have. So maybe if you could give...
Illegally download it, get on with it.
Right. Exactly. It's paid for by the British taxpayer, so it's all covered. Well, if you give sure, I can explain, but maybe you can give a short assignment. What is the show, and maybe why you wanted to make it? What was the sort of the impulse behind wanting to write this and do this show?
The rough idea of the show is someone who's a television newscaster is overheard at a party making a sexist joke, which he can't even remember making, or so he claims. and somebody tweets about that, but doesn't tweet what the joke is. And there's a mounting concern that if it's too bad a joke, then his career might be over. And he's trying to work out, and the production team are trying to work out a joke he could have made that's exactly sexist enough to get him in trouble, but not sexist enough to end his career, right? Where is that line, you know, family-friendly misogyny? I mean, that one, you know. So it proceeds that way for a while, but I have to say, it as you know, it switches entirely as you start to realize what actually happened. So whatever opinions you formed of anyone at the beginning, you'll have a different opinion by the end. That's the idea. There's a fairly big twist in it, and I've noticed a thing with big twists is you probably shouldn't mention them. But so the people who annoy you at the beginning might not be the people who annoy you at the end, and so on, and all that. And it's got Karen Gillan in it, which was who's Amy Pond in Doctor Who, of course, and apparently had done some movies. I don't know. And Hugh Bonneville, who was of course, so wonderful in Downton Abbey, and lots of love. Nick Mohammed, who was great in Ted Lasso, and Ben Miles, who was in Coupling, and Alex Kingston, who was River Song in Doctor Who. Please watch my new show. Legally, if we'll find. Where's Sue sitting? I'm terrified now. Yeah,
I mean, a PBXC somewhere in the studio audience.
I used to, every time Doctor Who went out when I was running it, I used to go online to see how quickly an illegal version was available and in what quality in America. Just so I could go back into the office and say, what are we doing here? The version I've got of the Doctor Who I just made on my computer is an HD version I downloaded from the internet that's better than the one you give me.
It's also sort of a measure of really your popularity, right? If you can see something getting pirated immediately.
Well, it's a measure of the show's popularity.
Yes.
But yes, absolutely. We are a strange industry. We get really, really cross that people are so enthusiastic about our product that they desperately want to get it early. I feel as though some other industries might have had a different solution to that. Yeah, it may not be the greatest business idea in the world. No, you can't have it yet.
Always have to have the windows. It's very important. With your new show, with Douglas Is Cancelled, I mean, it's been interesting because I saw a lot of the reviews initially for it, and it seemed a lot of people really loved it because they saw it as a sort of a takedown of woke culture. I saw a lot of conservative papers in Britain which were all for it and said, this is finally someone taking on the beast of woke liberalism.
Yes, the beast of some teenagers. Well done.
Do you have, obviously, say we won't reveal any spoilers for the show itself, but that's not what the show is,
No.
in my opinion. Does it concern you at all? I mean, even with the label, the show itself, Douglas Is Cancelled, it seems like it's setting that up. Does it worry you at all that it could be, I don't know, misinterpreted, or not misinterpreted, but maybe weaponized by people who have an agenda to just want to sort of attack a form of, of liberalism or wokeism, whatever that is.
I wasn't worried about that. I wasn't worried about people attacking it for that reason. I mean, some people did. I was slightly more concerned that, I think it's pretty obvious, even in episode 1, it's not going to go the way you think it is, right? But I sometimes think that people on my side of the argument, the liberal side of the argument, could be a little less touchy. Do you know, I sometimes think there is no rage more untrammeled than that of an affronted liberal. If you don't agree that we're the good guys, we will kill you all. It's not a smart way to be a liberal. But it's a comedy. It takes the mickey out of everybody, right? Everybody. But the main villains are certainly not whatever you call the plural of woke people. I don't know, wokeouts. That's a bit Doctor Who, isn't it? Yes.
So you don't support the idea that is often put forward that it's impossible to do comedy nowadays because everything is so restrictive and people are so quick to censure.
This is fundamental. This is so stupid when they say that. Look, you make comedy by breaking rules, right? So the more rules there are, the better you're gonna go, right? That's true. We like, and if you're smart, you like taking your turn in the satirical spotlight. It's healthy. Yes, Yeah, I mean, as I say, I think I, broadly speaking, identify as a liberal, but I love when people make jokes about them. It's great. What's wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that at all. You should be able to endure that very, very easily. Yeah.
You don't have any, you've never yourself been canceled.
I think when I was doing Doctor Who, I think there was an awful lot of people who look, if you run a very, very big, popular show that is talked a lot about on the internet, and if in addition you run another show which is also talked a lot about on the internet, the level of hate you get could down 3 passenger jets. I mean, seriously, it doesn't stop. And I was vilified endlessly for, in fact, what was it? I was a homophobe, a misandrist, and a misanthrope, and a sexist, and a misogynist, all of my, I thought I was, and a racist. I was against so many people I could only be described as an omni-bigot, which I would suggest means I'm treating everybody equally. The moment you arrive on the planet, I don't fucking like you. Right, yeah, you, I don't like you. I don't even know why yet, but I'll find something. So that was a bit weird, but I knew what it was, and it sort of faded over time. And of course, other people ran Doctor Who after me, Chris, and then the wonderful Russell came back. And they took on the role of being the chief Satan of the nation. And we're all just a bunch of very amiable, middle-of-the-road, nice men. That's all we are. Quite harmless. Quite harmless. That's good for me, isn't it?
Is that you like
harmless old
quite
man.
harmless?
Yeah. Look at him. Give him a sandwich, make sure his feet are warm.
Can I ask, because you've had such tremendous success with your shows, all made out of within more or less the British system, the British public system. Have you never? I mean, I mentioned briefly in passing the disaster of the U.S. attempt to adapt coupling. Did that sort of burn you for the U.S. market? Do you ever consider going? You must be had dozens of offers to go to the U.S. and make shows there.
It does happen. Well, first of all, and I have to be really careful here, because a lot of the people who made the American coupling are people I admire very much and like very much. The show didn't work for various reasons that are not all to do with those people. The head writer is a guy called Fief Sutton, we are still friends. He's a brilliant man. If you ever want to read a really good thriller, just look up his name. He's a fantastic thriller writer. Wonderful cast, stayed in touch with them. The show, if you try to remake coupling on the assumption it's exactly like Friends, you're going to end up with the wrong show. I mean, Friends is wonderful, but coupling was not that. Did it burn me? It didn't make me enthusiastic. I have actually had you say I had my big disaster in America. I had two. I also did, which I really loved, and I was very sad to see go, The Time Traveler's Wife for HBO, which got a set of reviews. Well, I don't know how to define what the reviews were like, except to say, if you have to go around the morning after saying, I'm not really romantically attracted to children, you've probably had a bad time in the press. During that era, and all right, the story ends happily, so don't get concerned by what I'm about to say. But during that time, I was also diagnosed with prostate cancer. I'm fine now, don't worry. And I remember reading my biopsy and thinking, you know, this isn't the worst feedback I've had. And also, they say that moments like that let you know what's important in life. They don't. I was more worried about the reviews. I was thinking, yeah, that's bad, I'm gonna die. But I mean, look at what Variety said. I suddenly discovered that I'm really trivial.
So, but I guess my question was though, why what you find in the British system and why you stayed there? I mean, what are the, obviously budget-wise, it's harder to make the shows in Britain than it would be in the US. But what does that system give you, either in terms of creative freedom or just in terms of your voice being recognized, or whatever it is, or just comfort? I have no idea. What is it within that British system that you think is so?
Well, one huge advantage it has for me over every other system is I live there, and I'm very happily living in London, and I've really no desire to live anywhere else. I like lots of other places, but I like living there. I don't know if I want to go and spend my professional or personal life being basically a foreigner. You know, I mean, foreigners are treated lovely here and in America, but it's not, I don't want to be that. I do think the British system is very nice and kind and decent and reasonable. But then I'm saying that from the perspective of someone who's done very well in it and who's probably now treated a little bit more nicely than some other people, partly because I've done well and partly because I'm old. You know, I mean, we're kind to the elderly. It's a decent thing to be. They get me a chair now and a cup of tea. I think, oh, this is good. So I wouldn't immediately have that status if I came to America. But, you know, the American system works brilliantly. There's no question about that. It does. It works amazing, amazing television. I've never fitted that comfortably into it. I mean, the Time Traveler's Wife thing, which actually, by the way, I've been talking about the reviews and indeed prostate cancer. That's a very bad way of promoting it. But I think actually was quite a good show and was not at all the show it was made out to be. Says he whimpered pathetically. I think it's actually quite good. Have a look at it. It's not a disgrace at all. But you know, there's one thing that frustrated Sue and I a little when we were involved in that was you talk about more money. We were kind of gritting our teeth and saying, stop spending so much. You don't need to. And the more money you spend making that show, the more likely you are to disappear. You know, if you can be an economically viable, modest hit or modest success, you'll survive. If you're just throwing money, saying, oh, never mind, we'll fix it in post, well, it costs money to fix it in post. So sometimes being lively and able to make economic shows well is not a bad skill. I don't think Doctor Who and Sherlock and well, Douglas has cancelled his small scale, or Dracula or anything looked as though they were suffering from low budget. I think they looked pretty good, but they were made at the screaming raw end of what we could do with the money we had. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing. I'm not appealing for less money.
Exactly. For anyone who's listening, he doesn't need
I don't need less money.
You can erase the zero. Well, I've been selfishly dominating this conversation, but I'd like to take some questions from the floor, and I can barely see here. Okay, because we don't have microphones, so if you, perfect. Now I can see perfectly. So here up front, if you can stand up and speak, and then in the back first, and then to the side. And speak loudly. If you don't speak loudly enough, I can repeat. And then over there, we'll just go one at a time, otherwise I'll lose track.
My question is, you write for a lot of characters who have kind of this history behind them. What's your approach to respect the history of the characters like Sherlock and Doctor Who while still being able to give them a fresh take and a fresh spin and tell your stories through them?
By all means, demonstrate your knowledge of the character, but never your reverence. You have to be irreverent about what you know. I think it's important. I remember when I went to see the very first Spider-Man movie, the Tobey Maguire one, which is a very good movie, I thought. And I remember saying to Sue afterwards, I know nothing about Spider-Man, but I know the people who made that really do. I know that was right. You can tell, you can sense, even if you don't know the detail and the history, that's somebody who appreciates it. But you can't revere it. You've always got to do something outrageous with it. Just a little, you've got to tweak its nose while loving its face somehow. That's a terrible, terrible metaphor.
Perfect.
But you've got to do something that's a little bit fun. Like, we gave ourselves license to muck about with Sherlock Holmes by saying it's not quite the original. He's in the modern day. Now, if you know your Sherlock Holmes, we were after that outrageously faithful to Sherlock Holmes. Just not the detail, just the things that we matter. But yeah, that's the best I can come up with.
Back, yeah. You can stand up if you're. Yeah. I'll repeat you if you're not.
No problem. In terms of the way your work is now consumed, streaming, and people can binge watch, has that changed or influenced at all how you create your work?
It's a really interesting question. I don't think any of us have got a very coherent answer to that. You can see across the board in television that people are unafraid of quite complicated serials. If you go back to the 1960s and watch the original Star Trek, those episodes are literally made to be seen in any order, right? There's no arc to it at all. Quite a few years later, there was a show that I loved. maybe everyone else has forgotten it, called Murder One. Do you remember that? Yeah, and that was very innovative. It was extraordinary. It was one big story all the way through. Every show we watch is now one big story all the way through. We don't mind setting up something in episode 1 and not referring to it again until episode 8, because you're supposed to be paying attention. I quite like the era of television where watching television or watching a particular television show is an actual choice. There's quite a lot of shows that existed because people sat down at about the time they'd sit down in the evening and they're tired, turn on the telly and watch what was coming out of it. Now, watching television is quite different, isn't it? You think, what is there that I would like to watch? And the truth is, I bet everyone in the room is like this. There's about 14 shows you've been told endlessly you should have watched or be watching, and you haven't got to them yet. So, I mean, it's getting quite stressful. You hurry past the television saying, yes, I'm gonna get to it, for God's sake. I haven't watched The Sopranos yet. I mean, so I think it's quite different. We now treat television, and this is purely, simply a good thing, the way we treat books. Now, your bookcase doesn't tell you when you can read. It doesn't say, no, that's one chapter, you're going to wait a week and read another. Although when books were serialized in magazines, that's exactly what was happening, and that's why Dickens wrote the episodic way he did. But so television is now, each television show is watched as a positive choice. Now, it is common at this point for dinosaurs like me blinking at the asteroid to say, but far fewer people watch any individual show than they used to. That is true. That is true. Well, first of all, even my grasp of arithmetic is equal to pointing out there are many, many, many more shows to watch and roughly the same number of people. How do you think this is going to work? The other thing is, just about everybody who watches a particular show has chosen to watch it. It wasn't just on. It was what I chose. I'd heard from my friends. It's starring someone I like. It's got a cool title. There's a sexy person in it. Whatever the reason is, all those reasons feed in, and it becomes a positive choice. What is wrong with that? I can't see anything wrong with that. Also, that hideous expression that people keep punting out as if it was a good idea. Are we losing appointment to view television with? Do you have that expression here?
Yes. Yeah.
Appointment to view television. Is it not grotesque to be making an appointment with a television set? Make an appointment with your dentist or your friends or your lover. You don't make an appointment with a television set. That is absurd. Get in control of your lives.
Probably a good place to stop. We have time for one more question. And ma'am, there's, yeah. I think with both of them, either, yeah, I'm sure I'll let you go ahead.
I was wondering, how do you deal with analysis and synthesis when you're coming up with ideas and actually doing it?
Say again.
He said analysis and synthesis. That's closer, but we'll see.
Analysis, and what do you mean?
For example, as an actor, I'm taught to synthesize, but as a writer, I analyze things. And so thinking in the moment or living in the moment, as a writer, as a television creator, when you're coming up with actors or situations,
Right.
or when you're talking with, for example, Sue and trying to figure out things, you're synthesizing, but you also have, as an analyst, you're kind of also taking back and processing things over periods of weeks and months in accordance. And how do you kind of bring them together to kind of think about the plan and implement them in the moment?
I think someone has complicated the process for you. Now, okay, I can't talk about acting because I'm not an actor, but writing. All the rules you already know. You know them all. Every single one. There's an awful lot of people. I mind a cottage industry and trying to make this sound complicated for you. Things like 3-act structure. Do you mean beginning, middle, and end? Oh, piss off. Right? I mean, if you've ever successfully told a joke and got a laugh, you know how a story works. You have a hook, right? If you're telling a funny story from work, you have a hook. You say, well, you'll never guess whose in underpants got wet today. You do something that makes, what, darling, what do you mean? And then you develop it, and then you have a surprising resolution. I mean, that's it. In terms of writing, if you want, I think, the number one piece of advice is really, and this applies to to screenplays, books, plays, texts, notes you leave on the fridge, anything, every sentence has to make you want to read the next sentence. That's dynamite if you can do it. That's dynamite. Do that. Keep people reading. The other thing is, people who have never used words like analysis and synthesis are some of my friends and some of people I've never met who write books about how to write, and I'll recommend some to you now, which are anything written by William Goldman. Any William Goldman screenplay, they're published, but anything written by William Goldman is an example of how you tell a story. He's fantastic. On Writing by Stephen King is amazing. Now, he's talking about novel writing, and he's very, very clear he's not talking about movies. That's the only thing he's wrong about. Story is story, and his grasp of story reaches to the moon and back. He's so clever. He never uses those words, though. He's just basically saying this and this and this, and it's anecdotal and it's funny. These are fun books to read. There's a book by an English playwright called Alan Ayckbourn called The Crafty Art of Playmaking, which is astounding. I read it when I was 60. And it told me stuff about how to write that had never occurred to me before, ever. It's brilliant, and it's very practical, and it's hard-headed, right? To read those books. What's the other one? Ashley Russell's book that he wrote about with Ben Cook about show-running Doctor Who. His name's gone right out of my head. That's terrible. I've forgotten my mate's book. It's a very good book, though. The Writer's Tale. The Writer's Tale. Those are very, very good ones. But, you know, only listen to people who are doing it for a living right now. Don't listen to people who are making a living out of not doing it right now. Okay? That's my view. All right.
Well, perfect. Well, I think we'll, unfortunately don't have any time for any more questions. Otherwise, this session will run over. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Please, a round of applause for Steve Moffat. And Douglas is canceled as the new show. Always have to pitch the new show at the
yes,
end.
please find a way to legally acquaint yourself with, now that I can see my wife in the audience, with Douglas is canceled. Yeah, it's good. It's funny. It's got jokes. All right.